There we go. He's just got it.
Testing? Yes. Welcome everyone to tonight's meeting of the Urban Planning Delegated Committee. Before we commence the meeting, I request that all mobile telephones be turned off or switched to silent. Thank you. This meeting is being live streamed on the Council website, so you will be able to view the proceedings of the meeting, councillor deliberations and voting. The meeting is also being recorded and will be made available on the Council website as soon as practicable after the meeting. Should technical problems be encountered during the meeting will be adjourned until the problem is rectified, or if needed, the meeting will be postponed. My name is Councillor Jim Park and I chair this committee. I'll start by introducing my fellow councillors and officers. Seated to my left at the horseshoe table, the Mayor, Councillor Gary Thompson, Councillor Susan Bigger, Councillor Cynthia Watson, Councillor Nick Stavrou and Councillor Felicity Sinfield. Across opposite from Councillor Sinfield is Councillor Lisa Hollingsworth, Councillor Wes Galt, Councillor Di Gillies, Councillor Jane Addis and Councillor Victor Franco. Officers in attendance tonight, seated behind Councillor Stavrou is the Chief Executive Officer Philip Storer, and we also have seated next to, where's Nick Lund? Seated behind Councillor Gillies is Nick Lund, the Acting Director of Urban Living. Seated to my immediate right is Simon Mitchell, the Manager of Strategic and Statutory Planning, and to his right, Robert Costello, Senior Project Planner. To my left, Adele Thayer, Acting Manager of Governance and Legal, and to her left, Kirsten Ritchie, Coordinator of Governance. Adele's over there. All right. I knew that. And Elizabeth Manu, the Senior Governance Officer, to her left. Essentially, the purpose of the Urban Planning Delegated Committee is to deal with issues under the Planning and Environment Act and the Building Act. This committee has delegated authority to make decisions on behalf of Council. Councillors are familiar with the report, which includes a summary of the objections received. For those in the gallery tonight, presenting this evening, when we come to the agenda item, it will be introduced by an officer. I'll then call you one by one to come forward to the end of the horseshoe table and address the committee. If you're making a submission, please present your viewpoints clearly and concisely on why you support or oppose the planning application. Please don't repeat what earlier speakers have said and keep your submission focused on relevant issues and points not previously raised. If you're opposed to the planning application, please inform the committee why you're opposed and suggest an alternative approach which would satisfy your concerns. Please focus on those concerns rather than matters of history or detail in the officer's report. Note that there's a strict time limit of 3 minutes for each speaker, including councillors, and whilst as chairperson I reserve the right to vary that time, I seldom do. I will ask speakers to stand, I'll ask speakers to take a seat at the end of the horseshoe table and invite those speaking against to speak first, followed by those in favour. At the 2.5 minute mark, I'll make a sound and that indicates that you have 30 seconds remaining to conclude your presentation. Apologies. Ms Ritchie, have we received any apologies?
Through you, Chair, there are no apologies for this evening's meeting.
Thank you. That takes us then to item 1, adoption and confirmation of the minutes of the meeting held on 17 May 2021. I'm in search of a motion. Councillor Thompson.
Happy to move.
And that's seconded by Councillor Gillies. I'll put that motion. Those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Item 2, declaration of conflict of interest of any councillor or council officer. Are there any such declarations? No. Item 3, presentation of officer reports. 3.1, heritage nominations. McIntyre Partnership 2 Hodgson Street and 25 Swinton Avenue, Kew. That report will be presented by Mr Costello. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. The purpose of this report is to inform the Urban Planning Delegated Committee of the outcomes of the Heritage Review prepared by Extent Heritage of the properties owned by Mr Peter McIntyre and his family at numbers 2 Hodgson Street and 25 Swinton Avenue in Kew, and to seek a resolution to commence the planning scheme amendment process. Mr McIntyre, Director of McIntyre Partnership, approached Council in late 2020 to request a review of the heritage significance of the properties owned by himself and his family at numbers 2 Hodgson Street and 25 Swinton Avenue in Kew. The site includes the River House, designed by Mr McIntyre and constructed in the 1950s. Council's heritage consultants have reviewed the property and recommend heritage controls be implemented by way of an updated citation for the River House at Heritage Overlay 72 with an expanded curtilage for the building and the activation of internal alteration controls, tree controls and outbuilding and fence exemptions for the jetty and the landing in the Heritage Overlay schedule. External paint controls already apply to the River House. A revised heritage citation for the River House is provided at attachment 1 to the report. Council's heritage consultant has recommended a separate heritage citation and a planning control covering Summer House and Cliff House as an individually significant heritage place. Council's heritage consultant has recommended the activation of external paint controls and tree controls in the heritage overlay schedule for these properties. A new heritage citation for Summer House and Cliff House is provided at attachment 2. Officers are tabling an alternative officer's recommendation tonight to make the following minor changes to the citations: clarification of the site address for the River House as Lot 3, Number 2, Hodgson Street, Kew, and nomination of the trees to be subject of tree controls for the River House and the Summer House and Cliff House in the respective citation tables, and retention of prohibited uses permitted for the River House in Heritage Overlay 72, recognising this is already allowed for in the existing heritage control for the property. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. We have only one speaker tonight, and that's Mrs Mary Drost. Mrs Drost, would you like to just come forward and take a seat at the end of the table there? And I'll ask you to commence your presentation with your name, please.
I'm Mary Drost, and I would like to say that I strongly support this heritage nomination. I would like to further say that going back to when I was a councillor here, sitting where you are, I brought in an area from Riversdale Road to Canterbury Road. The back of Burke was Camberwell City then, and I regret terribly that I didn't make the whole of Camberwell heritage. And the only thing I'd like to say, I'm delighted you're doing these two houses, but do more heritage. You know, stop them being pulled down and built up with horrible new things. You know, we should be saving our heritage in Burundara. We've still got a lot that's not protected, and I think, you know, your council should be working on finding more areas to protect. Of course, I approve of this strongly, and but the only thing I've got against it is this is not enough. There's much more areas in Burundara that need protecting. Otherwise, all the heritage will be gone, and that's a tragedy. All right? You know, there's some of the areas here were built. My own house that I live in Prospito Road, you know, was built in the 1880s when the trains came through. And there's a lot of houses that are old that are not protected. And so for pity's sake, do more of this. Thank you.
Thank you. There are no questions. Any matters arising? Mr Costello? Any matters arising? No. Councillors, are there any questions of officers? Councillor Galt.
I hate to disappoint, Chair, but in relation to the River House, you mentioned outbuilding exemptions. Does that mean we accept that those are there and they will stay as part of the heritage?
That's correct. Yeah, the landing and the jetty.
No other questions. Councillor Stavrou.
No question, Mr Chair, but I foreshadow a motion when appropriate.
I'll take that motion, thank you.
Look, I'm happy to move the motion of the officer's recommendation.
As per what's on the screen?
The revised recommendation, yes.
Thank you, and that's seconded by Councillor Sinfield.
Happy to.
Yes, Councillor Stavro.
Would you like to speak? Thank you. Look, let me first thank the officers for what was an excellent report. I certainly learned a lot by reading the report, not only about the property that we're talking about tonight, but also about the area and the architectural history of Melbourne. I think I've said it before, but that it's a wonderful, wonderful thing to live in this community like ours, where I think its natural beauty is often complemented by significant architecture that forms part of our heritage and will indeed be our future heritage. A very notable part is the Studley Park area, and not by chance, I dare say, that when you read in the report, and I'll quote here, Kew's Western Fringe seemed to attract the most resident architects in the 1950s. So that's certainly something. Of course, one of those architects is Peter McIntyre, who contributed so much to the post-war modernist style. And I particularly like the term used on his architectural philosophy. I don't know where I read it, and it was called emotional functionalism. It's an extraordinary term. I don't claim to understand all its nuances, apart from the fact that it does seem to capture the Australian spirit, where the tension between emotion and the practicality of function seem to coexist. In terms of what we're deliberating tonight, I certainly can't do any better than the words that were used by New York's Vogue in 1956 to describe the River House. And there I quote again that it was described as uplifting and full of musicality, like some exotic bird of paradise perched high on the densely wooded bank. And with those words, I'd ask my fellow councillors to support the officer's recommendation.
Thank you. If any other councillor is particularly keen to speak, I'll use my discretion, but if not, I'll put the motion. Councillor Franco.
Thank you. I'd just like to echo the words that Councillor Stavru made. I think this is one of the most significant modernist enclaves that we have in Melbourne, and I'm delighted that we're addressing this issue. Along with my colleagues, a number of my colleagues, I had the privilege, and it was a privilege and remains a privilege to have actually had a tour of the buildings in question. I consider it one of the great honours of having been a councillor that we had that opportunity to visit the site. And I think so often mid-century modernist architecture has been neglected. It's a personal passion of mine to really see these works protected. And I'm just very delighted with it. And I thought the officer's report was superb. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Stavru, any reply? No.
Echo the words, no.
Thank you. Then I'll put the motion. Those in favour? That's carried unanimously. That takes us then to item 4, general business. Are there any items of general business? No. Item 5, urgent business. Are there any items of urgent business? No. Item 6, confidential business. Are there any items of confidential business? I declare the meeting closed. Thank you.